this is the one where I was leading up to when I cut the other day. I saw Peter walking down the street, down Bastion Lane, and he had Alexa at his side. And I was sitting on the front porch, and she caught me. She caught a glimpse of me, and her pace quickened, and she said, "Mommy, Mommy," and started running towards me. And I had been conditioned at that very early stage that I could not see my children outside of the scope of my visiting hours. Those 6-hour, 2 increment hour time frames, 3 days a week. And that was drilled into me. And so my motherly instincts were replaced by fear. I saw my child, my baby, running towards me. And I ran behind the house and cowered like someone who wasn't worthy of being seen. I thought that I would get in trouble if I spent more time with my baby. And so instead of running towards my child, I ran behind the house and cowered in fear. There was a time when I've had Alexa ripped out of my hands, ripped out of my arms, literally, when it would be time for me to go from a visit. And Peter would have to pull her away from me, and she'd be crying, "Mommy, Mommy, Mommy," and crying for me. And it never got any easier. I mean, I don't know any of you out there, all of you guys are parents now pretty much, who can't relate with that type of pain. There were a couple of times where Liam, when it was time to go, he literally jumped up in my arms and held on to me like a vice. And this is a 7-year-old, 8-year-old child, and I literally had to pry him off my waist because it was time for me to leave. I had to pry him off my waist, and that's no small exaggeration. Saying goodbye at the end of each visit never got any easier. Week after week, month after month. Not being able to give my children the emotional one-on-one attention that I was used to, that they need, was a challenge for me, because whenever I would go over there, the younger kids would be clobbering all over me. My older boys needed attention. They needed one-on-one time. They had issues that needed to be addressed, and I was stretched so thin with my time that I never left the house without one child or another being disappointed. And that was really hard too, not being able to be enough for them when they needed me. One time, Zachary was out in the field, in the pasture. He was, and I was behind the fence. It was in our property, and he had stepped, unbeknownst to him, he had stepped on a beehive that was on the ground. Zachary is not necessarily allergic to bees, but he's highly sensitive to them. And so what happened is he stepped on unknowingly, and one stung him in the crook of his arm, and he recoiled and screamed. And then another, and all of a sudden there was this swarm emerging from the ground, and he was wearing pants, but they were all around him. He was being attacked by bees. Like, it was a whole hive. He started screaming, and he just bolted down the street, just ran as fast as he could, crying. And he was 13, he just turned 14. He was 13, and I went screaming and running after him, like down the street, Zach, wait for me. And I had already seen the kids that day for my visiting hours, and when your brain and your mind is so conditioned to be fearful of breaking those rules, I reached the threshold of the house, and I hesitated before entering the house. Zachary was being attacked by a whole hive of bees, and I hesitated at the threshold of the door. I tentatively stepped in, and he was stripping in the shower. He got down to his underwear in the shower and was just screaming and swatting these bees off of him. And my mother-in-law, Julie, was helping him, and I was really freaked out. I really wanted to be with him. But my time was up for that day, you know? I was essentially not really allowed to, I guess. That was difficult. There was this one time where Alexa was sick, my baby, and Julie called me and said that she was feeling sick, that she was feeling ill, and I had the audacity to cave into my motherly instincts, and I asked her. I said, "Could I come see Lexi today because she's sick?" And she hesitated and paused for a moment, and she said, "Well, I don't think that's a good idea. She's sick." And in my mind, I'm thinking, I know, that's why I want to see her. She's my child. She's sick. Don't you understand? I can never say these things out loud, but, you know, I was covering up the rage. It was not easy to take that. Everything about it was so wrong, so unjust and unnatural.